We had a report of a disturbance at your house. Is your husband Michael? Okay, I'm sorry to tell you, ma'am. He's been killed.
A staged crime scene, a fake murder, and a wife who thought she had gotten away with it. When Dahlia Dippolito walked into her home to find her husband murdered, she did not know the police had orchestrated the entire scene. The tears she shed, the shock she expressed, all part of a performance, but the real drama was about to unfold.
I brought 1,200. Like, that's all I brought. Doors. Like, I'll give you 20 once it's done.
What happens when the victim walks into the interrogation room alive? This is the jaw-dropping story of a murder-for-hire plot that backfired spectacularly.
No, she wasn't just 100% sure. She was 5,000% sure that she wanted her husband killed.
The meeting with the hitman. The air inside the car was still, not tense, not frantic, just still, the kind of stillness that makes words sound louder than they are. Dahlia sat in the passenger seat, her posture relaxed, her hands resting in her lap like she was discussing a business deal. In a way, she was. The man beside her was not what she thought he was, not a contract killer, but an undercover officer named Witty G, wired for sound, the cameras rolling somewhere unseen. He had done this before. He knew the way to let silence stretch, to let the other person fill it. She leaned toward him slightly, her voice low but steady, no hesitation. She wanted it done, and she wanted it clean. The kind of certainty she carried did not come from impulse. It came from planning, months of it. She told him when her husband walked the dog, which route he took, and how the back door was always unlocked. She laid out the rhythm of his mornings like clockwork, explaining that it would be the perfect time to strike. He nodded, letting her think she was in control. The money came next, $1,200 in cash. She said it was to buy a gun. She counted it out carefully, each bill sliding from her fingers into his hand. Then came the photograph. A single image of her husband, Michael, was placed on the console, like it was nothing more than a receipt. Outside, people fueled their cars, checked their phones, and drove away, never realizing that feet from them, someone was paying for a man's life. The officer played his part. He told her the job would be quick, 2 shots to the head. Make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Take a couple of items, leave the rest. She did not flinch at the words, did not ask about pain or if he would suffer. She only asked when. He suggested Wednesday morning. She agreed without pause. It was the kind of agreement that left no doubt in his mind or on the recording about her intent. I am 5,000% sure, she told him. The kind of overstatement people make when they're trying to sound casual but want to be taken seriously. She even offered details about how to avoid suspicion, who might be home, and who might notice. She thought through the aftermath, not just the act. And as they spoke, the officer kept the conversation flowing, making sure she confirmed every detail on record. The meeting lasted just over 20 minutes, enough time to secure every piece of evidence they needed, enough to know that this was not a joke or a passing thought or a trap she was laying for someone else. When she stepped out of the car and walked away, she believed the plan was in motion. The clock had started. She could picture the scene in her head, the call from the police, the concerned officers, the tears she had to summon. She thought she had imagined every detail. What she had not imagined was that the man she had just hired was not working for her at all. He was working for the very people who would soon stage her husband's murder and walk her straight into a trap she would not see coming until it was far too late. Before the sting, the couple's beginning, before the gas station meeting, before the envelopes of Besh and whispered instructions, there was a story that looked, at least on the surface, like a romance. Dahlia was in her late 20s, polished, well-dressed, with a smile that could shift from warm to calculating in the space of a second. She was working in real estate, but that was not her only source of income. On the side, quietly, she was working as an escort, a business built on appearances, charm, and the ability to adapt to whoever was sitting across from her. Michael Dippolito was in his 30s, a man with a record. He had served time for fraud, had been involved in schemes trading commodities that did not exist, and carried the kind of criminal history that tends to follow you around. But he was also, by most accounts, doing well financially. He had money, a taste for nice things, and an eye for women who could match his style. They met in an almost ordinary way. No dramatic setup, no wild coincidence. Just 2 people whose lives overlapped in South Florida, drawn together by attraction and perhaps something more calculated in her end. Their dating period was short, a whirlwind of expensive dinners, trips, and long conversations where they seemed to want the same things. Within 3 months, between October and January, they were married. Friends noticed the speed, but the love stories move fast sometimes, and no one could say for sure if it was a red flag or just passion.
Mike and Dahlia seemed to be a perfect match.
Michael described those first weeks as smooth, even exciting. They were getting along, making plans, talking about the future. But almost as soon as they moved into a new home in Boynton Beach, something shifted. The money began to move, not in his direction, but out of his control. Dahlia convinced him to sign the assets over to her name. She argued it was for his protection, that while he was still on probation, it would be safer for her to hold them. She made it sound reasonable, and Michael, wanting to believe in his marriage, agreed. That decision would hang over him later, when he realized exactly what kind of person he had married.
I don't even realize if these jurors realized they were talking about a person she was trying to kill.
There were other moments, smaller, but telling. Anonymous calls to the police reporting him for narcotics. Officers showed up to search his vehicle. One time, drugs were found in the gas cap. Michael swore he would never be a dealer, and the timing made no sense. It was the kind of trouble that did not just happen, it was planted. At the time, he brushed off the worst of it. It was easier to believe they were unlucky or targeted because of his past. But the truth was more dangerous. The person he shared his home with was not protecting him. She was positioning herself. She had already taken hundreds of thousands of dollars through schemes and missing transfers. And now, with the home and other assets in her name, there was very little left for her to gain without removing the one person standing between her and complete control. In Michael's mind, divorce might have been messy, expensive, yes, but survivable. What he did not know, what he could not have guessed, was that his wife was not thinking about separation at all. She was thinking about permanence, about a solution that would not leave loose ends, the kind of solution you can't come back from. Red flags and rising tensions. If Michael had been paying closer attention, the warning signs were everywhere. Not vague feelings or subtle hints, but hard, undeniable events that should have made him step back and ask who exactly he was living with. It started with the money. At first, small amounts went missing, which could be written off as mistakes or timing issues. But soon it was larger sums, tens of thousands at a time. Dahlia always had an explanation. A wire transfer was delayed, a deal that was still pending, money in motion that would be returned soon. One incident stood out in his mind. He had hired a lawyer to help him get off probation early, a process that required paying off restitution. Dahlia had promised to contribute $90,000 from her side, with him providing $100,000. When it came time to hand over the cashier's check, she hesitated. She wanted her money first, she claimed. Michael had to scramble, running back and forth to make the exchange. When the lawyer finally received the check, it was not for $191,000. As agreed, it was for $191. The lawyer, disgusted, threw them out of his office. It should have been enough to shake him awake. But in marriages built on quick trust, people can overlook what they do not want to face. Then came the drugs. One morning while staying at the Ritz-Carlton in Manalapan, Michael was approached by police in the parking lot. They said they would receive a tip that his truck had been involved in drug activity and asked to search it. Confident there was nothing to find, he agreed. They found nothing that time. But the next day he went to get gas and found small bags of narcotics hidden in the gas cap compartment. He knew they had not been there before. The implication was clear. Someone had planted them, and if the timing had been different, he might have been arrested on the spot. This was not an isolated scare. Similar incidents happened again, sometimes with police arriving to search his vehicle. The calls always seemed to come when Dahlia stood to gain the most from his arrest. On probation, any drug charge could land him back in prison, and with his assets already in her name, that would have left her in control. He began to notice the pattern. Trouble seemed to find him only after they had been together. Before Dahlia, his life was not free of mistakes, but it was predictable. Since marrying her, the police had been to see him more than 10 times. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how little he knew about her life. She was secretive about money, vague about where she went, and skilled at redirecting conversations when he pressed for details. Privately, he began to wonder if she had been targeting him from the start. She had known about his criminal history, about the restitution he owed, about the money he had access to. She might have seen him not as a partner, but as an opportunity. But even then, even as the pieces began to fit, Michael did not consider that she might want him dead. Divorce maybe, ruin certainly, but murder? That belonged to a different kind of story. What he did not know was that Dahlia had already moved beyond schemes and planted evidence. She was making calls, testing the waters with people she thought could handle a job that required finality. She was not looking for a way out of the marriage. She was looking for a way to end it, permanently. And in her mind, the first step toward that end was finding the right person to pull the trigger.
Now first, like always, be sure to hit the like button down below. It helps us out tremendously with the reach of this video. Thank you.
The informant, Mohammed Shahadi.
Mike and Dahlia seemed to be a perfect match. It was truly a fairy tale.
The man Dahlia chose to approach was not a stranger, and that was deliberate. She needed someone she could trust, or at least someone who believed he could trust her. His name was Mohammed Shahadi, an ex-boyfriend who had once been close enough to know parts of her life most people did not. To Mohammed, the call came out of nowhere. She spoke with the same casual rhythm she used in everyday conversation, but the subject was anything but ordinary. She wanted her husband gone, not divorced, not moved out, gone, permanently. At first, he did not quite process it. People say reckless things when they're angry, but this was different. She was calm, measured, as if she were asking him to pass along a business contact. Did he know someone? Someone who could do it quietly, without leaving loose ends? Mohammed felt the weight of it sink in. This was not a joke. She was not testing him. She was, in her own words, dead serious. She even described Michael's appearance. 5'6", 5'7", dark black hair, good-looking. She was setting the stage, painting the picture for a man she believed could connect her to a killer. But Mohammed was not going to find her an assassin. Instead, he went straight to the police. The Boynton Beach Police Department saw immediately what this could become, and they knew they could not rely on hearsay. Words alone, without proof, would not hold up in court. So they made him an offer, or rather, a request. They wanted him to become a confidential informant. His role would be simple but dangerous. Meet with Dahlia, keep her talking, and let them capture every incriminating word on tape. Mohammed agreed, though he admitted later he was nervous. The police reassured him they would keep their distance, monitor the meeting, and make sure he was safe. Still, there was no denying the risk. Dahlia did not strike him as the kind of person who left things unfinished. The plan was to meet somewhere public, a gas station where the conversation could happen without drawing attention. Mohammed would steer the discussion towards specifics, payment, timing, and method. They wanted her to commit on record. When the day came, Mohammed followed the script. He told her the hitman wanted $1,200 up front to get a gun. Without hesitation, she counted out the turtigi and handed it to him. Then she passed over a photo of Michael. The way she slid it across, casual and unhurried, made it clear she had thought this through. For the detectives listening in, this was the moment it became more than suspicion. This was the first tangible proof, the kind you could take to court. She was not speaking in hypotheticals. She was paying for a life to be taken. Still, they wanted more, enough that there could be no doubt in the eyes of a jury. That is when they decided to take it to the next stage, an introduction between Dahlia and their undercover officer, the man who would play the role of the hitman. If all went according to plan, she would give him everything they needed, confirmation of her intent, the timing, and the final payment agreement. All on video, all undeniable. For Mohammed, it was a strange position, sitting across from someone he had once been close to, helping the police build a case that would destroy her life. But he also knew this. If he stayed silent, Michael Dippolito might not have much life left to destroy. Planning the sting. The morning of the sting was quiet, the kind of humid Florida dawn where the streets feel suspended in time. Inside the Boynton Beach Police Department, there was no stillness, only the focused rhythm of preparation. Detectives checked gear, coordinated positions, and ran through the plan one last time. Michael was already gone from the house, escorted out under the cover of darkness. Upstairs in the master bedroom, crime scene technicians worked with deliberate care. The bed was left unmade, drawers pulled open just enough to suggest hurried searching. A lamp lay on its side, the shade slightly dented. And on the bed, Michael's body, pale makeup applied to his skin, fake blood streaked across his temples, lay perfectly still. Photographs were taken from every angle: the open front door, the disarray upstairs, the close-up of his lifeless face. These images would later become the visual punch meant to convince Dahlia that her plan had succeeded. Meanwhile, Dahlia was at the gym. This had been part of the arrangement with the supposed hitman, her alibi. She would be there, far from the house, when the job was done. The police were timing everything down to the minute. Just after 9 a.m., her phone rang. The voice on the other end told her there had been an incident at her home that she needed to come immediately. She did not ask for details in a way that suggested real surprise. She left the gym quickly, driving straight to the house. By the time she arrived, the street was lined with police cruisers and unmarked cars. Yellow tape fluttered in the warm breeze, cordoning off the property. Neighbors stood at a distance, murmuring. Television cameras, courtesy of the cops' crew, were already in place, capturing every second. Sergeant Frank Ramsey approached her with a measured tone. "I'm sorry to tell you, ma'am, he has been killed." Her reaction came instantly. Loud sobs, cries of, "No, no, no, oh, no."
Is your husband Michael? Okay, I'm sorry to tell you, ma'am, he's been killed.
She doubled over, hands to her face, turning her head away from the cameras. Ramsey placed a hand on her shoulder, telling her they needed her to come to the station to help identify possible suspects. She nodded through her tears, her voice breaking. But to the trained eyes around her, something about the grief looked prepared. It had no hesitation, no stunned silence before the performance began. Inside the house, the scene sat untouched, a carefully constructed illusion. At the station, the photographs waited, and only a few rooms away from where she would soon be sitting, Michael Dippolito, alive, was watching the trap tighten. She thought she was stepping into the final stage of her plan. In reality, she was walking into the moment where it would all collapse. The fake murder scene. Dawn broke heavy and wet, the kind of Florida heat that slows breath and softens sound. Nothing moved on the blocks around Boynton Beach, but inside the police building, the quiet had purpose. People spoke in short sentences. Checklists clicked down. Routes were confirmed, radio channels tested, and the timeline pinned tight. Before first light, Michael had been guided out and hidden from view. In the main bedroom of the house he once shared, technicians shaped a lie with patient hands. Sheets rumpled, drawers eased open to a believable stop, a crooked lamp left resting on its side. On the mattress, his body waited under pale makeup, thin lines of stage blood feathered at the temples, the chest still as stone. Cameras traced the room like surveyors. They shot the door standing ajar, the scattered touches of disorder, the face that was not dead but looked like death. The pictures would be the blade edge, ready to convince Dahlia that her wish had been granted. Across town, her alibi unfolded on schedule. A workout, a familiar routine, exactly where the supposed hitman had told her to be, and exactly where the detectives needed her to stay. Every minute was measured, every call pre-written by the plan. A little after 9, her phone lit up. A careful voice said there had been trouble at the house and urged her to come now. She did not press for details. The drive back felt direct, efficient, like she had already rehearsed the route. When she turned onto her street, the scene was already drawing eyes. Marked cars, unmarked cars, light bars flashing faint red and blue in the morning glare. Tape quivered along the edge of the lawn. Neighbors gathered in small clusters and spoke in low tones. A television crew there to follow the department stood ready behind their lenses. Sergeant Frank Ramsey stepped toward her with the gravity of bad news. "I am sorry to tell you, ma'am. He has been killed." Her answer arrived like a reflex, loud sobbing. A repeated, "No, no, no." She bent forward, covered her face, and turned away from the glass. Ramsey's hand rested on her shoulder while he asked her to come to headquarters to help them with names. She agreed between broken breaths. Training sharpened the view. The tears looked immediate but practiced, the kind that start on cue. Back at the house, the false death remained untouched. At the station, the photographs waited in a folder. And only a few doors from the chair she would soon take, Michael Dippolito, breathing, whole, watched the plan coil shut. She believed she was entering the victory lap. She did not see that the floor ahead of her had already given way entirely beneath. The interrogation and the reveal. They led her into the small interview room like it were routine. A table, 2 chairs, neutral walls. The detectives entered with measured sympathy, offering condolences before sliding a form toward her. It confirmed she understood she was being recorded. She hesitated, her eyes scanning the paper, the pen hovering a beat too long. Then she signed. The questions began softly. Did she know anyone who might want to harm Michael? She leaned into a practice story, Michael's criminal past, his probation, and old enemies from Boca and prison. She named no one specific, just enough to suggest a shadowy network of people who might hold grudges. Her voice was even, her gaze steady. But the detectives knew the truth. They let her keep talking, weaving her fiction, until the moment came to change the tempo. One left the room. Moments later, the door opened again, and Michael Dippolito walked in, alive, standing only a few feet from her. Her face went still. No gasp, no rush toward him, just a frozen, calculating pause. Then she shook her head and said, "I did not do anything." The room shifted. The detectives told her they had it all: the meetings, the money, the photo, the recording of her saying she was 5,000% sure. She repeated her denial, but they pressed on, telling her the case was finished. She was under arrest for solicitation of first-degree murder. "Please come here," she called to Michael. He did not move.
Mike, come here. Come here, please, come here.
His silence said more than any words could. The cuffs came out. Her voice rose in protest, but the officers did not argue. The evidence was locked in. Every step she had taken had been toward this moment: the sting, the reveal, the walls closing in. In that fluorescent-lit room, the performance ended, and reality took its place. Trial, sentence, and aftermath. The footage from the sting did not just become evidence, it became national television. By coincidence, the TV show Cops was filming with the Boynton Beach Police Department at the time, capturing the investigation from the inside. Viewers saw everything: the staged crime scene, her street-side reaction, and the moment she was confronted with Michael alive. In court, Dahlia's defense claimed it was all a setup, that Michael had engineered the spectacle for fame and revenge. They argued she believed the meetings and money exchanges were part of some strange scenario for the cameras. But the recordings told another story. Her voice was steady, her instructions precise. She was not acting. The prosecution leaned on that certainty. They replayed her 5,000% sure remark, showed the cash she handed over, and the photograph of Michael she provided. Every piece fits the same pattern: intent. After years of legal wrangling and appeals, her case reached its conclusion in 2017. The jury found her guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 20 years in prison. Michael moved on, but the betrayal left a mark no sentence could erase. And Mohammed Shihadi, the man she had trusted to find a killer, remained the quiet pivot point, the reason Michael was still alive. Dahlia will be eligible for release in the 2032. Until then, her world is confined to prison walls, a far cry from the open, sunlit streets where she thought she had planned the perfect escape. And for those who watch the case unfold, she remains frozen in that image, sitting in a car, counting out bills, certain of her freedom, and unaware that the trap had already closed. In the end, Dahlia's story was not just about a marriage gone wrong. It was about the quiet calculation that can hide behind a smile. She believed she could control every piece, every person, every moment. But control is fragile, and truth has a way of slipping through the cracks. The cameras caught her words. The plan she thought was flawless became the evidence that sealed her fate. In 2032, she may walk free, but the image remains: a woman in a car, counting bills, certain she was buying freedom, and instead buying the walls that would close around her.